I was at the $1,700 buy-in World Series of Poker circuit main event in Chicago on a riverboat, the Grand Victoria Casino. I was swashbuckling on a riverboat, like Maverick in Mel Gibson, but, I don't have his traits outside of poker. I'm just going to disclaim that. Anyway, it was my first orbit. It was 100, 200. So early on, we get 40K chips to start. And I already had a little bit of a read on the table. Like there was some players at the table. I was like, oh, that's a player who is a pro. And some players who was like, oh, that is not a pro. And the woman who opens in this hand was not a pro for sure. And she had about 40K also. She opened to 600. Again, 200 big blind. She was in early position or +2. I was in the low jack with 8-7 of hearts, and I decided we were deep enough that I could kind of play this like a cash game and 3-bet this hand. So okay. I 3-bet it to 2,100. How do you want to mix here typically with 8-7 of hearts at the 200 blinds deep?
I think I want to be paying attention to who's behind me, especially in the big blind, if it's an amateur or a pro. If it's more of an obvious amateur, I'm more apt to call to try and let them in, because the amateurs are the ones, especially in the first levels, they're going to make the biggest mistakes. They can make the 200 big blind mistakes. The pros are unlikely to do that. The amateur might put it all in, even though we make our flush because they have a 2 pair or they made a straight or something, or whatever. They may lose their minds in spots. So that would be one consideration. Besides that, I don't know. I've really I've sort of taken to 3-betting a lot more myself. So I know you have as well. And although I haven't played a tournament really since I started doing this, it's all been cash.
It's different, obviously.
I think you're deep enough that it's okay to do. It sucks to get blown off the hand, but it's not a big deal, right? Like you have so many chips now. It's just 40K. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you're going to you lose 5% of your stack if she 4-bets you, right? Assuming she 4-bets you just to a size that you have to fold, which is, I assume, usually going to be the case if she's 4-betting. But she's probably not 4-betting much. She's probably 4-betting like aces, kings. That may be it. It's it's so early in the thing.
Yeah, I don't know. But part of why I 3-bet it was also because I wanted to isolate her, because I think some of the pros were left to act behind me, and they had a little bit of that flat brim hat squeezy look to them. Some of them, like like I don't want to be the non-aggressor in this hand if I'm going to end up in a 3-bet pot with 8-7 of hearts.
I think you win a lot more by being the aggressor, and I think there's a lot of value in isolating the non-reg, the amateur, for sure.
Yeah. So I did. I made it 2,100 over 600. What do you think of that sizing at 40K deep?
I think it's fine. I assume we're often getting called, and that's fine to get called because we're going to win a lot. We're going to win way more than we lose post-flop. Right? Yeah. So it's great.
Well, here's where things get interesting. It folds back to her, and she snap raises to 6K, like without thinking about it. Just like snap raise to 6K, but kind of like angrily, like get out of my pot style. You know how sometimes that's how it goes?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is obviously not the ideal outcome, but I'm thinking like I have position and she's giving me a little bit too good of a price here. It's 3,900 more to call. So I ended up calling.
Yeah. There are some problems with this, of course. Like our stack to pot ratio is already like kind of in the dumper with a hand like 8-7 suited, right? Like we're basically at 3-to-1 stack to pot already. Which is not really what you're looking for with that kind of a hand. But we're in position, we're heads up, and she can't put us on this hand. I mean, she can, but she's unlikely to put us on this kind of a hand. And if she has the aces or the kings, like she often is going to have, right, we can play pretty straightforwardly after that. It does suck to put in this many chips right now, though, I will say. And I don't love it, but I feel like she made it a little bit more. We have a pretty easy fold, right? If she makes it like 7,400 or something like that, we probably have a pretty easy fold.
Yeah,
you're getting a really good price and you're closing the action.
If I were her, I would have made it 8K if I were to 4-bet, and I think that gets a fold out of these types of hands. But 6K feels like I'm kind of obligated to call. Really. And in tournaments, we take a lot of 3-to-1 SPR spots later in tournaments with these types of hands. It's not that uncommon, if you just think about it that way.
We do, but usually not where the opponent's range is so tight.
Yeah,
she has a very strong range right now, right? Usually it's like somebody opened and I called.
Yeah, Yeah, my read is not that she has aces. She might have any hand other than aces based on her like kind of angry snap raise. I feel like typically amateurs, in my experience, will like take a little bit more time and like kind of try to make it look good because they feel so comfortable,
right?
You know, and in this case, she's uncomfortable no matter what her hand is.
So it sounds like ace king actually, based on
ace
how you're
king,
talking
kings,
about
queens, jacks feel like the hands to me. Maybe not jacks.
Jack seems unlikely, but
yeah.
I mean, I wasn't there. And of course, some people will lose their minds with all sorts of things.
I think it's probably ace, king, kings, or queens. But again, I just have like a one orbit read on this person, so I'm not 100% sure. I do take the flop.
Happens?
I call with 8-7 of hearts.
All right, here we go.
The flop is ace of clubs, 9 of hearts, 4 of spades.
Right. So we have two back doors.
We do. The 9 of hearts.
Does she check?
No. No, she bets 7K, but she looks so incredibly nervous and unhappy. Like, I can really sense that she's not thrilled with this. And it might just be that this is a big tournament for her. That's a problem. It's possible that this $1,700 buy-in, which is reasonable, is just a big tournament for this player. And she has ace king and she's nervous. You know, that's really quite possible. But I also think there's a lot of the time that her nervousness is genuinely kings or queens or sometimes jacks. And she just wants the hand to end right now. She wants the nightmare to be over.
Yep.
I don't really want to find out right now. I think she's going to check kings and queens and jacks on the turn. I do. And I have I have a fair amount of good cards on the turn. So,
I agree completely. Listen, I think this is, if you're going to continue, the play is call. You're in position. There are some really good cards to you on the turn anyway. But if she checks, I think it's a green light no matter what. Like, we're firing if we call on the flop, right? We're firing. What card are we not firing on? Like, it's hard to come up with one.
It probably doesn't matter against this player profile, but I think raising is not a great story. It's like just two types of hands. It's just sets of 9s and sets of 4s, which are really the only types of hands that I have here that I can raise comfortably. So I want to be able to tell the story of like, oh, you have kings. That's too bad that my ace jack suited got there. You know, that's the story that I want to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. I have ace queen. Of course I call your flop bet. And then she's like, and her heart shrivels up a little bit and then she checks the turn, right?
Yeah. So I take a second and I call, feeling pretty good about the spot, like feeling pretty good that I'm going to get the information that I need on the turn.
Sure.
The turn is the jack of diamonds, which is, it's okay. I mean, if she has jacks, obviously that's a problem. But I did get 4 outs just in case. I don't think she ever has king queen. I'm never going to run into a higher straight, you know? So just in case she calls. So now's the moment of truth, right? Does she bet or does she check? Because if she bets, I feel like the biggest dum-dum in the world, right? I'm just like, oh, cool. That was a really cool way to lose 13K of my 40K with 8 high the whole way.
Stack. You just light your third of your stack on fire for no real reason.
But part of my general poker philosophy recently, and I've told you this before, Jonathan, is that like I'm trying to take every spot and I'm trying to be a bit unsafe. And I think that's effective. And I think early in tournaments, it's easy to get into the mindset of like, well, I just need to wait for the people to make mistakes and I'll catch them when I have a hand. But accumulating chips is also pretty important. So that's why I'm in this spot, I guess.
I mean, there's a counter to that, of course, which is like we could accumulate chips and wait for spots where our opponent doesn't have this really strong range. But we're here and let's see what she does. Like, fine. I don't hate the call on the flop. I don't know if I would have done it, but I understand it totally.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad you do. I felt like it was a baller call. The turn, jack of diamonds again. She checks.
I think everything you do is a baller play, though.
No,
anyway,
I don't.
She checks. All right.
Sometimes I make bad plays for sure, but
so she checks. So we're betting.
She checks,
obviously. So there's 26,000 in the pot, right?
She does. Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's let's see, 14 plus 12. Yeah. So I want, like, in tournaments you can size smaller in general, but also I wanted to tell the story of like I could just have an ace and be betting here, which I don't know if I really would in real life with an ace.
Doesn't matter.
If I had ace 10 suited, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
So I bet 11K. What do you think about that sizing?
I think that should be pretty effective. Are kings really going to hold on? Seems unlikely. I mean, some people are just going to be a station and call, but I think 11K ought to do the trick a lot. So, I like 11K.
Yeah. So she goes into the tank and she looks so upset. And I'm like immediately clear that she has kings or queens. I don't think she's acting. I don't think she's trying to generate a shove on the river after a call. And at this point, I'm honestly hoping she calls. I want her to call so that I can shove the river.
So you can get her to fold the river.
Yeah. But after a few minutes of tanking, she does fold. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just think it's like, I know it's not like a super huge hand or anything, but I think it's interesting because I kind of stepped outside the box and relied on my reads and it worked out. And
right. This is a read-based play, right? This is the fact that the way she put in the 4-bet and then the way she bet the flop lets you feel really strongly about her range. And then after that, it's if you're right, then it's very easy, right? Then of course you do the things you did. And if there's a good chance you're right, it makes sense. And it seems like there was a good chance you were right, and indeed you were. Nice.
Yeah, that felt pretty good.